It's Easter Sunday, and we don't have many traditions here at Community, but for a number of years now, we've followed a tradition that's been a custom in churches really around the world for centuries. And I'm talking about the Paschal greeting. And the Paschal greeting, maybe you know it, it goes like this. I say, "He is risen," and then you say, "He is risen indeed." Okay, let's just try this. Remember, I say, "He is risen," and you say, "He is risen indeed." He is risen. Very good. Now, we say that every year, and it's actually been said for years and years and centuries. But what does it mean? What does it actually mean that Christ is risen? Here's what I want you to do. If you have a pen or paper or even a notes app on your smartphone, I want you to jot down a few words about why you celebrate Easter Sunday. Why do you celebrate this day? Seriously, I want you to do this. Take a pen and paper, either on your smartphone somewhere, and just write down why you celebrate Easter. And I don't want you to kind of overthink it. I don't want you to stress about it. Don't Google it, right? Just write down why you celebrate Easter Sunday. What does this day mean to you? And if you're not really sure, that's okay. If you celebrate it because friends and family celebrate it, just jot down, "I celebrate Easter because they do." If you celebrate it because your mom or grandma were going to exclude you from the Easter brunch, then just jot down Easter brunch. That's why I celebrate it. But whatever you do, just jot down a few thoughts on what this day actually means to you. Okay? Let's go back to the source of the Paschal greeting. It's actually from the Gospel of Matthew in chapter 28, and it reads like this. It says, "After the Sabbath, at dawn on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven and, going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men. The angel said to the woman, 'Do not be afraid, for I know that you're looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. He has risen, just as he said. Come and see this place where he lay, and then go quickly and tell his disciples that he is risen from the dead, and he's going ahead of you into Galilee, and there you will see him. Now I have told you.' So the women hurried away from the tomb, afraid yet filled with joy, and ran to tell his disciples. And suddenly Jesus met them. 'Greetings,' he said. They came to him, clasped his feet, worshipped him. And then Jesus said to them, 'Do not be afraid.'" Well, here's my question for you. What I just read there, do you really believe it? I mean, do you really believe that Christ is risen? And I want to be real clear, not just figuratively, kind of like in your heart or in your mind. I want to know, do you believe that Jesus was crucified, dead for 3 days before he came back to life? Do you believe that? I've been a pastor long enough to know that even lifelong followers of Jesus kind of struggle with this belief. I also know there are many who insist that it didn't happen, at least not in the way that most Christians say that it happened. And then there's many that are somewhere in between. There's a whole bunch of people that would really ask, well, does it really matter whether it was literal or figurative? And after all, is it just a story about an inspiring idea that we can overcome even the greatest obstacles in life? And furthermore, let me ask you this. Does what we believe about the resurrection, does that really even matter? Whether it's absolutely true or absolutely false or somewhere in between, what difference does it actually make in my everyday life or in the afterlife? Does it matter what I really believe about the resurrection? Well, here's what I want to do. I want to spend about the next 20 minutes on what I believe is something that ultimately matters. Yes, it matters for eternity. But I'll tell you what, I think it also matters just every bit as much about today, this week, this year. In fact, I would go so far as to say it matters far more than most of us could ever even imagine. So let's just back up and let's ask this question. Does what we believe about anything really matter? Let's wrestle with that. See, some of us, when we were young, we were told by a parent or maybe a teacher or a sibling or maybe even a friend, you're a screw up, you're never going to amount to anything. And a big part of us believed it. And that's why we lack confidence, or that's why we work so hard every day trying to prove ourselves. Beliefs, they matter. Does what you believe about your body in any way affect your everyday life? You see, some of us, we were told that, we were ugly, or we're fat, or we're skinny, or worse, or much worse. And that's why when we look in the mirror, we don't see the beauty that others see. It's why we eat or don't eat. It's why we stay away from the opposite sex, or why we are almost histrionic in our efforts with the opposite sex. Beliefs matter. And I think most of us agree that if you wake up even just kind of believing, hey, today's going to be just this awful day, it'll probably be what? An awful day. On the other hand, if you wake up believing this day is going to be just awesome, your chances of having an awesome day, they skyrocket. Why? Beliefs matter. In college, I can remember there were actually times that I would actually go ahead and dress up. I would just dress up if I knew I had a tough test to take. You know why? Look good, feel good, do good. I believed it would make a difference. And I was fortunate enough to grow up in a home with two parents, who loved me unconditionally, and led me to believe that everybody else around me, they also loved me. And I can remember I was probably 20 years old before I discovered, you know what, no matter what, there are going to be some people who just do not like you. But up until then, beliefs matter. And I'll tell you what, I do not know any psychiatrist, I don't know one counselor, I don't know one coach or pastor anywhere who would say, what we believe, it doesn't really matter. You know why? Because it does matter. It matters every moment, every day. What we believe affects us every day. It affects our relationships, what we believe does. It affects our status, what we believe does. It affects our body, our finances, our performances. It matters a great deal. In fact, every single person wakes up every single day driven by what we believe. So if we go back to Paschal greeting, does it really matter or not what we believe? Again, I would say it matters far more than maybe you could even imagine. Now, earlier I asked you to jot down a few thoughts about why you celebrate Easter. Okay, take a look at what you wrote. Take a look at maybe what you jotted down. My guess is if we were to take a turn answering, we might get as many answers as there are people. But regardless of what you wrote down, let me tell you what I believe is maybe the best reason to celebrate Easter. This reason could affect everything about how we live our lives, how we view the afterlife. It's that important. It's that powerful. It's that life-changing. And here it is. I believe the resurrection means this. I don't have to be afraid. I don't ever have to be afraid anymore. That's what Easter means. Do you know what the most repeated command in all of Scripture is? It's this phrase, do not be afraid. Over and over and over and over again, we hear that. Jesus tells us this, do not be afraid. Matthew 10:31, he says, you're valuable to God, then he adds, do not be afraid. In Matthew 14, he says, I will be with you in scariest of times. And then he reassures, so don't be afraid. In the Gospel of Mark, it says, hope is not lost. Jesus declares this. Then he says, so don't be afraid. In the Gospel of Luke, chapter 5, he says, your life has tremendous purpose. And then he reminds us, so going forward, don't be afraid. In Matthew 28, it says, Jesus says, the darkness did not win. I am alive. The resurrected Christ then says, do not be afraid. So try to get your head around this. The one who created life, the one who was with God in the beginning, the one who is God, the one who would rather die than live without us, he says this, you don't have to be afraid anymore. And who are you going to look to for answers? And I'll tell you, I'm going to go with the guy who predicted his death and said 3 days later he'd rise from the dead and then did it. You may struggle to believe it, but never mistake this. What you believe and what you believe about the resurrection matters. Christ's victory over death gives him the authority to tell us if we do or if we do not, going forward, have to be afraid anymore. And he says this, do not be afraid. Have you wondered why? Why did God say, do not be afraid so often? Think with me for a minute about how maybe how you learn some of the most basics of subjects in schools, like reading, writing, or arithmetic. Here's what I'll do. I'm going to put a few math problems on the screen, and you just kind of respond. You ready? All right, here we go. 2 plus 2 equals 4. Next one. 6 plus 6 equals 12. 5 times 3? 15. 7 times 6? 42. Yeah, you don't even have to think about it, do you? The answers just come to you. Because when you were a kid, I mean, you had those crazy flashcards, right? And that you wanted to kind of just rip up and throw away. But your teacher kept showing those to you. Repetition, right? Over and over and over again. And you finally got to the place where you knew the answers just instantaneously. You didn't have to think about what 2 plus 2 equals. You just knew the answer, right? Well, could it be that God tells us, do not be afraid over and over and over again? Because more than anything else, He wants us to live every single day knowing and believing that we don't have to be afraid. He wants it to be so ingrained in our minds and also in our hearts that it actually does affect, this belief affects how we live every hour of our day. I think God knew that fear would have the potential to actually cripple us, to hold us back, to keep us from being all who we could be. Let me ask you this. What are you afraid of? There are lots of things a person can be afraid of. I did an informal survey just kind of around here, and some of the biggest fears around community. Here are the top 5 biggest fears. All right, see if you can identify these. Arachnophobia. Arachnophobia is the fear of spiders. Yes. Coulrophobia. Coulrophobia. It's the fear of creepy clowns. Felinophobia. You probably know that one. Yes, that's cats. That was mine. Fear, hate, same thing. It's all right there. Next one, homilophobia. Actually, homilophobia from the word homily. It's the fear of sleeping in church because sermons go too long, which we're not going to do. Thanatophobia. That one is actually the fear of death. And death is something that probably most of us, to one degree or another, fear. I recently ran across a very interesting website. I don't know if you've ever seen this or not, but it's called the deathclock.com, deathclock.com. And all you have to do is you just kind of punch in some basic info, like your height, your weight. Actually, they ask if you're optimist or pessimist, then some other stuff. And then you hit enter. And in seconds, what it does, it actually gives you your estimated date of kind of expiration, when you're going to die. And you can see there's mine. I plan, at least they tell me, I'll get to live till August 22nd, 2058, which means I got about 1.3 billion seconds remaining. And it's kind of funny on the internet there, it says, on that website, it says, friendly reminder that your life is slipping away. Gee, thank you. But one of the things they do after that's kind of interesting is what they do is they actually, after they give you your projected death date, then they give you 3 options. And they say, well, here's option number 1. If you want, you can learn how to delay your death through some diet plan where you lower your overall caloric intake. That's option number 1. Then they say, well, here's option number 2. You can learn about ways to cryogenically freeze your body in hope of kind of future reanimation. And then they give you number 3, you can plan your own funeral, and you can kind of click to all these different things. Now, I don't know about you, but none of those 3 options were of great interest, not to me anyway. I mean, I like Easter brunch too much to be interested in option 1. Option 2, the cryogenic freezing, that's a little too much Michael Jackson-like. And number 3, funeral doesn't sound like my idea of a good time, just planning that. But think about this. When you really believe that Christ is risen, there's a 4th option. And the 4th option is, do not be afraid. We don't have to be afraid, even of death. So let me ask you this. What fears do you have today? Is there a relationship, that has you afraid and almost paralyzed? And maybe there was a time when it was going so well, but right now there's like this growing distance between the two of you. And if it continues down that same path, you know you may not make it. Maybe it's a health concern. That has you fearful. You've been to the doctor. She's still trying to figure out exactly what's the matter. What exactly is this wrong? Or maybe you haven't gone to the doctor because you're afraid of what she might tell you. Maybe for some of us, it's finances that have you living in fear. The bills just keep piling up and piling up and piling up, and you know your income just isn't where you thought it would be or where it needs to be. Or maybe it is this topic of death. The uncertainty of what happens when your days come to an end. It gives you this free-floating anxiety that even right now as I'm talking about it, you're going, I wish this guy would quit talking about it. I feel like my head's going to explode. Let me just ask you, as candid as I can, what is it that you're afraid of? What is it that you're afraid of? See, what you believe about the resurrection matters. It matters right now. It matters every second, every minute. It matters Monday through Friday in real life. Because if we believe Christ is risen, We do not have to be afraid anymore. Not of death, not of anything. So how does the resurrection actually do that? Why don't we have to be afraid? Well, here's why. Let me just be real clear with you. We don't have to be afraid because the resurrection declares that God's with us. You are not alone. Theologians actually call this the incarnation, the belief that God came near, that God came to earth in the person of Jesus. So Jesus himself actually said, they said, surely I'm with you always to the very end of the age. And the resurrection means that God is with us, and that is a game changer. That changes everything. I remember when I was in junior high, one of my good friends was a guy named Rich Jarvis. We actually called Rich, we called him Biggin. Biggin. And Rich was one of those guys who hit puberty at about age 7 and had a beard by about 5th grade. He was just huge, just a huge kid. In junior high, he was like 6'5", and like a foot taller than everybody else. Now, when I was with Biggin, I was not afraid of anyone or anything. I was fearless. Why? Because I was with Biggin. When you believe that Christ is risen, you believe that God is with you. You could say, he's a biggin. There's no reason to be afraid of anyone or anything. And secondly, not only is God with us, but the resurrection also means we don't have to be afraid because God is for us. He has your back. See, that's exactly what Jesus did for us when he died in our place. He is a God that is for us. Theologians call this the atonement. The atonement is this reparations, making reparations for wrongs and reconciling us back to God. We could not do that on our own. We needed help. And Jesus stepped in and he actually died for us. And Jesus refers to himself as the Son when he says, for God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son. Whoever believes in him will not perish but have eternal life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through him. Maybe the most recognizable passage in all of Scripture. And it reminds us that Jesus would rather die than live without us. He offered us help, the help we needed through his birth, his death, and his resurrection. He has our back. He's a God that is for us. He's with us, for us. But finally, and ultimately, it tells us, you know what? It's all going to be okay. It's all going to be okay. This is a God that's with us, for us, and he's overcome death. And if he can do that, he can bring life wherever there is death. If you have a marriage that's dead and dying, I'm telling you, he can bring it back to life. Do not be afraid. You might have a career that feels kind of comatose and purposeless. He can give it life. Do not be afraid. You might be dead broke. He can resurrect your life. Do not be afraid. There may be addictions and sinful patterns that threaten to kill every good thing in your life. He comes to bring life and says, do not be afraid. But here's the thing. Even if the hard stuff of life goes on being hard, the truth is Christ is risen. And it reminds us that ultimately we have hope. That one day everything will be made right. One day there'll be no more pain. There'll be no more suffering, no more tears. Everything will be okay. He even says in Revelation, I'm making everything new. It's all going to be okay. Don't be afraid. I want you to meet Mary. Mary's one of us here at Community, and this time last year, I think she would tell you she was afraid. She was afraid of losing it all. I mean, her health, her career, everything that she was most passionate about, including her very life. And here's Mary's story.
My name is Mary Beth Patel, and I've been attending Community Christian Church for 6 or 7 years now. A few years ago, I went in for a sinus infection, and they did a routine workup, and as part of that, some scans. And what they found was a brain lesion, and that eventually led to me having to have some very serious brain surgery, which did not go well. There were a lot of complications, so I had a brain hemorrhage as a result. And that has had repercussions for me ever since we had to go through that procedure, and will probably continue to have repercussions for the rest of my life. I would absolutely love to serve musically. It's what I've done for most of my adult life. At the moment, my doctors are concerned that if I do that, it's going to make me worse. Right now, we've made the decision to try to wait. There's times when I stand out in the auditorium and I'm experiencing worship and I love the music, but I don't even know what to do with my hands, if that makes any sense, because I'm used to holding an instrument of some kind or a mic or something. It's just changed the identity that I've come to rely on. And yes, I may have to face additional procedures. I have had to face additional procedures, and it's entirely possible at some point they may have to go in and do something else. I think for me, the tough thing is just not knowing, can we restore some of the things that have been affected or lost? And what is that going to look like for me, for whatever life I do live? Because quite honestly, there's times it doesn't feel very much like you're living much life. And you're just trying to get through day to day, sometimes half day to half day. In my case, I think it's all about, can I at least restore some of the things that are being affected enough that I can do the thing I just love so much? And I don't know. I just don't know. I have great hope and I have great faith that we will get there. And I don't know if it's going to be in the time that I would prefer, which would have been months ago, and it may be a longer walk. And the truth is, if it should be not something that's possible, I also trust that God will put something else in my path. That's what He wants me to be focusing on. I think God is probably, writing some sort of music all the time with all of us, using both the major and the minor chords, and we can't always hear them or see them, but there's a composition being played, and these various beats in our lives, I see those as the different notes.
You see, it matters. It matters what you believe. What you believe matters. The resurrection means we don't have to be afraid anymore. See, because God is with us, God is for us, and no matter what we face in this life, we can be assured that it's all going to be okay. So let us remind one another today, Christ is risen, and He is risen indeed. And when you believe that, it makes all the difference. You can take hold of what God says to you over and over and over again, and it's this: do not be afraid.